Hello, Kevin Furman here with another installment of the Book of the Month Club for E3LC. We're in the series that's in the effective or efficient with things, excuse me, efficient with things. That's actually the second E. So there's three E's in what I do in my coaching and my leadership training and working with people. Is I kind of think of how things work in the like how to be a better person or how to be more effective, get a live a better life, kind of that realm. But I've over the years I've tried different things, and it's come down to these three E's, and they're um, once again, if you've been watching these videos, I'm going to keep saying this because I don't know who's going to be coming on when, so I got to keep introducing the idea because I want people to can really get into it and kind of think about those three things, as they really have resonated with me about how things really help me be better and become a better leader, become a better person, and etc. So the three E's are effective with people, efficient with things, and encouraging with myself. And I've certainly gone through phases of being great with those three and phases of not being great with those three, and never really the same category with all three at the same time. I can say never, but rarely, having like optimal on all three or just in the pits with all three, right? It's usually a combination of what's going on. And I think that's pretty normal for a lot of people. It's like, I'm cooking with my to-do list, but man, I feel like I'm just a failure all the time, right? So, being good with stuff, but not being good with yourself. Or, family life seems to be going pretty well. They might be ignoring a few things, but, pretty well, right? And then work's going great. And again, like I don't feel like I'm in balance. I don't know. Maybe I'm not really doing that. They just full of doubt, right? So there's all kinds of versions of what I'm saying, and I'm putting it out there in the sense that look, it's normal to be all over the place. So it's good to take a look at, I think, each area and really delve in and find things that work for you. And so what I've been doing with the book of the month idea is find a book in each of those areas, and we take a month to walk through a book and just talk about it. All right. And whether it's just me or whether it's me with some people on the call, I think it's just good to just kind of walk through a book and kind of share ideas about how that's worked or what it might look like, or what I've done in the past or what other people have done in the past. So anyway, this month's book is Secrets for Getting Things Done by Vincent Harris. It's a very short read, and I'm going to walk through the first 8 of the 25 strategies that he's got. So the secondary title, Strategies to Take Your Productivity to the Next Level. All right, and everybody talks about the next level all the time. That's very common. It's very kind of a catchphrase that everybody does. He wrote this in 2014. So it's not a super old book, um, but certainly very, very, very uh, to the point, like to the topic of at hand, like getting things done, right? Being efficient with things. So we're gonna just dive right in. So he talks a lot about just he's just spent a number of years, kind of like I have. Not that I'm Vincent or trying to compare us. I'm just saying we're similar experience in this realm of just reading motivational books, reading quote self-help books, or kind of like let's really dig in here. And that's honestly, I have to say that that's what I enjoy reading all the time. So I invite you to do the same, right? Just you don't have to read only that, right? I tend to just because I enjoy it so much. But I think, hey, what if you read, you like, oh, let's say you write reading romance novels. Okay, fine. Well, read a romance novel for part of the day, but then crack open a book like Secrets for Getting Things Done and read one strategy each day, right? You don't have to do 18 hours of it, but just add that into your mix. I think there's a tip in and of itself, right? So okay. That's a Kevin Furman tip, not a Vincent Harris. But his first strategy, number one, his first one is plan the night before, right? And this is super common. And if you look at any of the big ones, like they're going to talk about this. And the concept's been around forever. His quote, the first thing he puts in the chapter is the Ben Franklin quote. Um, version he's got here is by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. All right. I've heard it said, paraphrased differently, right? Those who fail to plan to fail. I've heard different versions of it. So it's attributed to Ben, which is good because he certainly brought to the forefront in America. But it has a lot of truth to it, and I think that's why a lot of people quote it. I've read it numerous times in books, and I have to say, yeah, I mean, even from a standpoint of just feeling good about what you're going to do, planning the next day or the week or whatever, um, it does a lot of good for your confidence. It really does. It really does help quite a bit. So what he does, he starts with this great story. It's pretty famous story about. I want to get his name right. Ivy Lee was a gentleman that went to Charles Schwab way back when in the 20s actually, and he said, "Look, I want to spend 15 minutes with each of your managers, and I'll increase your productivity." And Schwab was saying, "Okay, that sounds a little hokey. What are you going to charge me for that kind of deal?" Right? And he goes, "Look, let me spend those 15 minutes with your managers, and then in 6 months, write me a check for whatever you think it was worth." So Schwab's like, "Okay, well, if there's a bunch of hooey and nothing happens, doesn't cost me anything. Sure, go for it. Have at it, Ivy. Go talk to my people." And so he said he did that. Great. And so oh, it wasn't 6 months. Sorry, 90 days. He said in 90, so 3 months. Sorry. So 3 months later, or 90 days later, let's check in, see what's. So 90 days later, uh, Charles wrote him a check for the equivalent in today's money of $600,000. Okay, so obviously his idea was good, and he actually only spent 10 minutes with each manager instead of 15. So not only did he like hit this thing that was super effective, but created enough wealth for Schwab's company that Schwab was like, that was worth it. That just made me a mint, right? So that must have been a fraction of what he made. So anyway, what is it? What's his big tip? All right, here's what it is. It's really big. Ready? And it's kind of the way that Vincent does it too. He's like, okay, be ready for it, right? You're gonna maybe kind of like be like, what? That's it, but here it comes. All right. So that is, he says, look, the night before you go to bed, you write down the top 6 most important things that are connected to your main mission goal that you have to get accomplished for your job, right? So, um, so that is what you want to be doing, right? You want to just it's not just 6 things that are quote important or urgent or all those things that people talk about when they talk about to-do lists. He's like, no, the top 6 that are connected to your mission statement or goal, and that's what you do. You make sure you get those 6. And if you don't get them, you didn't get into detail, but look, you get 5 done, then number 6 becomes the first one for the next day, and you do the next top 6. And you just do that every day, and you don't worry about more than that. That's what you put on your list, and you focus on that. Vincent makes a point of like, a lot of to-do lists get to be like 20, 30, 50, 100 things on their list, and it just turns into clutter. I'm paraphrasing what Vincent said, but it just turns into clutter. Like, man, you can't focus on 30 things at the same time, and just it looks so daunting, right? Now, I've known people, and I tend to be one of these people too, that I organize it, right? So I know it's longer than that, but I know I'm focusing on the top thing, and I'm still honing my system. Actually, after all these years, I'm finding different ways to go about it, just tweaking small things about it. But there's a lot of validity to what he's saying. Like, dude, pare it down to the top, whatever. Some people say 3. Some people say, I think last month it was like top 3 was the hint on this. So it's a common thing. It's very uh, well, it's a common thing, right? It's used often, and so why not give it a shot? See what happens, right? Try it for a week, try it for a month, just do it. Top 6, go, right? All right, okay. That's enough of that. Strategy number 2. All right, strategy number 2 is use the 80-20 rule. Now, if you're not familiar with it, wow, you've been asleep. Just kidding. So here's the deal. 80-20 rule was kind of brought about by an Italian economist, Pareto, and so he found out that 20% of the people were producing 80% of the results, basically, right? And there's different forms of this and all that. And I'm not going to get into the theory of it and all that, but his Vincent's point is, look, two things. One, spend uh, your high energy or the most of your energy on the things, the 20% of the things that produce 80% of the results. And it's not just people, but the activities that you do, the activities that produce more output. Focus on those. Like you kind of have to do the 100% to find out where the 20% is at first, right? So you can't just pretend you know what that 20% is and you're just ignoring it, right? Sometimes you got to like go through whatever, like all the things you got to do, and in that, you'll find the 20% of that produces the most results. Then start putting your energies into that. Handle the other things in a minimal way, but put your main energy into the 20%. That's sort of his main point. Now, I want to do this addendum, and I've been using this forever. Um, and this is more from a leadership standpoint, but it's I just want to throw it out here since he brought up the 80-20 rule. And I actually have my own version of it, like a lot of people do, and they modify what it means and all that stuff. But I look at it from a 20-70-10 is the way I look at it, and it still applies. Everything's still the same and all that, but I add that 10, and here's what I mean by that. So, and I'm gonna talk about it in terms of leadership or it could be productivity, but I'm talking in terms of leaders, right? For a second, and that is 20% of the people of any group are going to be the leaders. They're going to take charge. They're going to do the extra. They're going to follow through. They're going to communicate when things are going well, and they're going to communicate when things aren't going well. For example, right? So they're the ones that are actually like going, and so they're producing, they're going, right? And they probably are doing 80% plus of the work, right? And getting 80% plus of the results. But 20% of any group is going to be in that category. They're going to be the go-getters, so to speak. 70% of that group it's a continuum, but they're going to be followers. They're going to just go along, like on the upper end of the continuum, they're going to follow along, right? And they're like, okay, yeah, that, sure, yeah, I'll jump in, I'll help out, sure, and then when it gets a little rough, like, well, I'm a little busy today, I can't handle it, or whatever, right? So they're not going to be always like on top, but they're willing to do some stuff, and then it'll sort of filter down to more on the lower end, where you'll get people that'll go, all right, I guess so, or whatever, right? So it could be an attitude thing or just an action or results. You can look at it different ways, but 70% of the group is going to follow, basically do what they need to do from, more than to the bare minimum. And then you're going to get 10% of any group that's actually going to drag the group down, right? They're actually going to do less than what's required. They're going to show up late. Their attitude's not the best, we'll say, right? And so they're sort of the drag on the group. Now the thing is, it kind of just like the 80-20 rule, it's not perfectly, 80-20. It's around there, right? And so is mine. The 20-70-10, it's around those numbers, but you can always kind of look at if you were to graph things out, you'll see that kind of holds true. And you can't necessarily just cut the 10%. Well, you can, maybe you should, but then you have a new group, and then that bottom end of the 70 starts to be more in that 10% group again. Not that they'll fall back to the exact same level that the other 10% was, but compared to what's left, right now you've got another 10% that's sort of at the bottom dragging, right? So it's always in that sense. So anyway, that's another thought about the 80-20 rule. I think it has a lot of merit. Uh, so Vince's point is just focus on the 20%, which I agree. Like when he's talking about just being efficient with things, focus on the 20% things that are going to get you the most results. Totally agree. All right. And then I threw my little thing in there just for kicks. All right. Strategy number 3. We're going to move on. Strategy number 3 is the law of forced efficiency. All right. And he talks about really just sit down, get the work done, and instead of worrying about everything, right? Focus on the thing you got to get done right now and really do it, and then move on to the next. And so the thing that is bold in the book, there will never be enough time to do everything, but there will always be enough time to do the most important thing. So that's this thing. It's like just work on what's important, not on everything. You can't get it all done in the moment. You can work on the most important thing, focus on that, get it done, move on to the next. That's really his main point in the chapter. Well, great words. Pretty much stands on its own, right? Okay, so we're going to move on. Strategy 4 is see the task as already being done, right? So what you want to do is visualize Well, okay, how does he get into this? So he's talking about how people that get stuck, right? They have these things to do and they sort of procrastinate or they just don't get things done. And then there's another category of people that tend to just kind of like jump in and do stuff, right? And so what's the difference between those people? It's not that they're lazy per se, the ones that don't do it. It's not laziness. It's like this habit of procrastination. And so he started to look at it and he says it's actually has a lot to do with the result and the feelings they attach to those results. And I would totally agree with this and have experienced this myself in different ways. The people he does an example of doing the dishes, right? There's some people like doing the dishes like, oh man, I really don't want to. I tend to fall in that category of like, I just don't feel like doing the dishes. It's like it's not fun. Seems like a waste of time. It's like, right? But when they're done, I'm glad they're done, right? So what he says is the people that don't do it, that put it off, focus on the immediate how they feel about doing the dishes, and the ones that do them focus on how they feel about the end result of doing the dishes. And the focus of that, right? The doingness is more painful than the picture of it done. And for the other group, it's the getting it done outweighs the doing. And it's just a matter of perspective. That's his whole point, right? So if you look at it from, and what he's trying to say is if you see it as done, put yourself in the place of it's done. How does that feel? And that will motivate you to get it done because then you're like, oh, I want that. Not just I want to avoid the pain of doing. I want the pleasure, if you will, of having it done. And oh, what that brings is like, oh, it brings me peace. It brings me, you know, peace, if you will, whatever, right? So it gets me the result of the thing as opposed to focusing on the doingness. So really, really good. So that's a good one, right? Has a lot more to do with what people are feeling, which I think motivates people more than just tasking, right? A lot of times when we think about thinking be efficient with things, we talk about the to-do list and task and how do you be better with your time, how do you manage your time, etc. He actually gets into like more what's behind all that, which is how does it feel to get it done, and focus on that, right? And then talk about possibilities there. Whole nother topic, not for the book, but it's an interesting thing to think about, and it's one that I would do in a coaching situation, by the way. So if you're looking at trying to explore like, well, why do I do, why do I have this kind of habit of not doing this thing? Not dishes, but whatever, right? I keep not doing it. Like, what is going on there? That would be something that definitely that I address with people in coaching and get great results and kind of delving into that and exploring that and looking at it from a different couple different angles. So there's an option too to kind of, have somebody walk you through that. I'm more than happy to. Email me, get a hold of me. Glad to help. All right, let's move on. Strategy number 5 is fill out a time log. So this is another one that a lot of people scoff at. I know because I've mentioned it to people that I do this at times, and they look at me like I'm insane. I don't